Bienvenidos al regreso de Spiel así, el podcast de entrevista de Pokémon TCG. En esta ocasión estamos con el entrenador top 5 de este día, Kaiwen Cabbabe. Kaiwen, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Doing really well.
What time is in Australia?
Yeah, so it's 9 a.m. in the morning.
Okay,
I actually just woke up, so yeah. After a long day of work yesterday, so yeah, it's good.
Great. Good. So we have 5 questions. We can start with the first one. How did you start in Pokemon TCG? How is the community in Australia?
Yeah, so I started playing Pokemon back in 2011. My cousin played when it was when it was a kid, so 2005 and 6, which is like the golden era, LBS, Drag Trade, this amazing era. And then I remember I visited him in Malaysia, and he showed me all these cards, and I was like, wow, this is really awesome. And he used to play this Ampharos Delta species deck, which was not very meta, and he wasn't actually very good, but it was more so I'd never been exposed to the cards before, and I just thought that was like, these cards look sick. He taught me a lot about how to play, and it was actually like quite knowledgeable in a lot of the very interesting fundamentals of the game, like price checking, and also like gaining advantage on your opponent, like card advantage, which at the time was not really a big concept, was a big concept in the Pokemon TCG, bigger than what it is now, because now we have like research, whereas back then it would have cards that specifically search for other cards. And then he used to just beat me every single week, every single time. And then I sort of got really into it like at the end of 2011, when I started watching a lot of Top Cup Pokemon. So Carl Sugovich used to, commentate on all these great recorded games from city championships, regionals, and upload them all onto the Top Cup Pokemon channel. And I used to just religiously come home from school and watch it every single day. And I'd learned so much. And then I'd use whatever pocket money I had at the time to just buy packs and try and trade up to get my first deck, which was Reshiram Typhlosion at the time. And yeah, from there I've just never really looked back. It's been awesome. And then in terms of like the community in Australia, I guess it's a really it's a very tight-knit community in Australia. Obviously, it's a much smaller country compared to a lot of other countries that play. But the cool thing about Australia is that there's a very high there's a concentration of really, really good players. And the really good players in Australia, like Brent, Natalie, Henry, they all teach other players how to get better at the game. So the average Australian player is actually quite competitive. And over the course of the last, pretty much post-COVID, since 2022, there's been this huge movement of a lot of local players getting together and trying to build the community. We have so many stores here in Australia now that have league cups and league challenges. I remember pre-COVID, we only used to have one league cup a month. Now we have 8 a month, which is awesome. Yeah, I feel like it's a really tight-knit community, and it's always growing, and it's always very welcoming for other new players to come in, which is really wonderful. Yeah.
Great. I watched your story in Limitless, and I saw that in the season of 2014, you not classify to championships. Do you remember that time period?
Yeah. Is it the 2014 World Championships?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do remember. The interesting thing was, so I won Worlds and Seniors in 2013, and then I had the auto invite to Worlds in 2014. And the interesting thing about me is, so outside of Pokemon, so I'm a medical doctor outside of Pokemon. So I've always been studying heavily whenever I'm trying to juggle Pokemon with the rest of my life. And in 2014, I was sort of transitioning to some of the more important years of my high school in order to get a good score. So uh, during that whole season, I think I only played about 5 tournaments, which like looking back was a big mistake, because I think, if you have the auto invite for the following year's Worlds, you should play as many tournaments as you can. It's like a free hit, and you should just play for the enjoyment of the game. During 2014 Worlds, I remember when I went into it, I was really nervous because of my first Masters World, and I'd played such like limited tournaments for the season. I only played 1 regional, which I ended up winning, and then I ended up playing just a few city championships and league challenges, which really that's not many tournaments at all. And I remember I started the tournament 2-2. I believe I lost to a Chilean player in round 4, and then I won out. I was 6-2, and then I lost my last round to a really good player. His name is Chase Maloney. He's also a former world champion in the last round, and he made top 8 at Worlds in Masters, and then I ended up top 32, which is still pretty good. But yeah, that was sort of my Worlds run at the time. A lot of regrets, actually, like in the way that I prepared for that Worlds, but I do have really great memories of my time then as well, for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about this year. How has been your season so far? Also, we saw you made it to top 8 in Lille. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, my season hasn't been great this season, but that's because I've just started my job. So I graduated at the end of last year, and ever since then, I've taken pretty much a big break from playing Pokemon. I had this like really strong start to the season where I went to Lille, Dunks, and also LAIC, and I came top 8 at Lille, top 32 in Dunks, and then I bubbled at 65th at LAIC, which is still fine. And I sort of knew that I had to take a big break. I was planning on going to EUIC, but just timing with work didn't work. And then similarly with Perth regionals and also Brisbane regionals, which normally I like to enter all the Australian regionals, but I had to skip those 2 as well. So I just entered Melbourne regionals. I lost my win into top 8, unfortunately. So came top 32 there. Yeah. So I feel like I've been able to stay at least relatively consistent. In terms of the Worlds race, I pretty much guaranteed my invite after LAIC. So I didn't really have to worry too much about getting too many points. But I'm hoping that like next season and beyond, I'll be able to play a little bit more after adjusting to work a little bit this season. Yeah.
Right. What do you think about the changes to the points and world invite system? You were tasked to invites. I don't remember.
Yeah. So, I guess I can just sort of speak broadly about the changes to the system. So I've played in a lot of different systems. So I've seen when it's just like a top 20 CP race. I've seen it, and that was like in the US. It was like a top 20 CP race or top 30 or something like that back in 2012. And then I remember, when they first introduced championship points, and there was a threshold back in 2013. So I played during that. I also played during the day 1 and day 2 Worlds era as well. And then I've also played through this system. So I've played through pretty much every change that they've made since 2012. I'd say that in Masters, the top 125 system in the US or the top X system, wherever in the world, personally, I don't think that makes much of a difference. But I guess like the reason why I'm saying that is because selfishly, I feel like the invite is something that is very obtainable. However, I do think that it gatekeeps a lot of players who are more so on the casual side, but still want to compete at the top level of Worlds. And I think that it also doesn't value, and it doesn't really take into consideration the amount of travel and the competitiveness that juniors and seniors need to go through in order to stick to an invite. And I think that when the prize money for juniors and seniors is much lower, but the cost is much higher because you have to travel with your parents and you pretty much have to travel to these big events in order to have any sort of shot at getting an invite to Worlds and staying competitive, especially when you're coming from Australia. I think that's that is a very difficult sort of balance to find that I hope TPCI changes. Part of me does wish that TPCI does change back to a day one, day two system, partly because I think that getting a day one invite for a player who's more casual, I think is a really great incentive compared to just competing for like just one generic invite. But also part of me thinks that having like our new system also sort of benefits me, because I wouldn't be able to fight for a day two invite just because of my time. But just thinking about like the broader, I guess, implications for the rest of the community, I think that was a really good system. So I guess like those are just my raw thoughts looking at the season having gone. I do think that TPCI will tweak the CP system in some way. So we'll just have to wait and see what they do. But I'm always positive, and I always say that any change is good change because it means that they're listening. And that's what you want. I guess the only other thing that I can comment on is also the tournament structure. The tournament structure is probably the one thing that I don't like. I don't like that we play less Pokemon, and it increases the amount of variance that occurs per round. It also pretty much makes ties obsolete. So, you know, like Melbourne Regionals, for example, I was X1-2 going to the last round. I lost my last round and I came top 32, whereas in previous years, there would be another round and I'd be able to fight for top 16, which actually is a big difference. You know, it's like $1,000 difference. And I know a lot of people at Worlds where they went X2, fighting for a win in the last round, and then they lose. They don't even get money at Worlds because they don't finish top 32 because of resistance. Fortunately, I wasn't one of those players, but it's a really, that's quite negative. So, I mean, two ways they could fix that. First way is they can give money to top 64 at regionals, which would be a really great change. Or, that would be fantastic. Or they can just add extra rounds. Instead of the asymmetrical top card, they could just add an extra round of Swiss as a start. So, yeah, and we've seen Pokemon change mid-season. You know, like last year, they had a 6-2 structure, and then they changed to an X2-1 structure. So I believe that they can also change this as well. So hopefully they listen to the community. It seems like it's something that a lot of people have been talking about. We'll just have to wait and see. But I always believe that they'll do the right thing by the players.
Okay, right. So the next question is, which do you think will be the top 5 decks at NAIC, considering the new expansion?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, like, you know, I am going to NAIC, so it is like pretty much front of mind. Yeah, and it's really nice to be able to travel to an international event again. So I'm very excited. So I guess from our groups testing so far, so like in terms of top 5 decks, I mean, in no particular order, because I can't really say for certain at this point which one's going to be best because of the way that engines are being refined. But Gardevoir still is quite strong. I know people are saying that Grimmsnarl pretty much beats Gardevoir, but I think that there are ways that you can maneuver that matchup. And has Gardevoir is just an inherently strong engine, and is very inherently powerful. So I think that it's always going to stay relevant. Right? It reminds me of 2008 Gardevoir, where it pretty much was relevant from 2008 until it rotated in 2010. Second deck, second is Dragapult. So specifically, I'd say Dragapult Dusknoir. I think straight Dragapult gets a lot worse during this expansion, just because I think I don't believe that its matchup against Grimmsnarl is actually that good. I think you need Dusknoir in order to swing that matchup into your favor. I think that there are a lot of things you can do with that deck, and the power levels also far exceed that of straight Dragapult, even though it is less consistent. So those two for sure. Then I'd say the Grimmsnarl Frostlass Muckidori deck is also like that is definitely the new deck to look out for sure.
Yeah.
So just to put into perspective, like Marnie's Grimstyle's attack is 3 energies, and there's it's 2 energies and there's 180 and 30 snipe onto the bench.
Mm-hmm.
That is an insane attack. Like that is crazy. Back then, back during my when I started, there was a card called Darkrai EX, and that did 90 damage to the active and 30 damage to the bench, and that was revolutionary for the game. So this attack is awesome. It has a sick ability, and having like the combination with Frostlass and Lucky Dory puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. So I do think that this deck will be, this deck will definitely be top tier. Whether or not it'll be the best deck, it's to be seen. And then I guess like the last 2 decks I would say would be aggro deck. So I'd say Bolt. So Raging Bolt will still be strong. Even with the release of Shaman, I still think that Bolt will be very strong. Just because inherently power levels wise, I think it's, having the ability to one-shot anything large is a good trait for a deck to have. It's relatively linear in that there's a very clear path for you as a player to build your board to combat what your opponent does. And I guess the last thing is if your opponent's committing to playing Shaman into their deck, they're usually committing to playing something, they're usually committing to not benching something else that they might need. So even though, like against Guardy might play Shaman, if they're benching Shaman, then they might not be benching something else, like a Monkey Dory that might be able to beat you. So it is, you have to give something, you have to give up something to gain something. And that's the problem that Guardy has against Bolt, but the matchup is still favored, I think, with Guardy. But Bolt will still be good. And the last one is Jolty Box. I think Jolty Box is criminally underrated. And the reason why I think it's underrated is because I think it has a really good Grimstyle matchup, and I think it also has a really good Dragon Ball matchup. It has a terrible Guardian matchup, and it doesn't do very well into Bolt, but it has it really it's very, very positive into both Grimstyle and also with Dragon Ball. So purely based on that, especially considering a lot of players like to play Dragon Ball, a lot of players like to play will want to play Grimstyle. It will be played. So I'd say those are my top 5 at this point going into NAIC.
What do you think about Condengo and Terrorbox? They will always in the top 5 usually, but with Martin maybe come to another top. What do you think about?
Yeah. So I think Terrorbox, which is, it's actually really interesting. So I'm just talking about Terrorbox first. It is a deck that actually fell off significantly at the start of last format, and then it increased in popularity towards the end. And I'd say it increased in popularity towards the end because it's probably the only deck that had an engine behind dealing with stage 1 evolutions that needed to set up. So things like Dragapult, dealing with Dracloak, dealing with Kelliers and whatnot. And it was really cool that the Japanese brought in the idea of Pidgeot. I ended up playing it to a cup last week and actually winning with it, which is really cool. So I think that so Terrorbox will still be played. The reason why I don't think it will be the top 5 is because I do think Shaman affects it more than any other deck.
Okay.
I also think that against Dragapult and against Guardy, I actually don't believe that people believe that Terrorbox is a really positive matchup against those two. I actually disagree. And the reason is because, if you think about it, against Guardy, the moment they get a Gardevoir EX out, it's very hard to deal with. You pretty much can't deal with that card. And then you have to deal with the Ionos. You have to deal through Bidoof to get there. And essentially, if you don't have Pidgeot in play, or if you don't have a way to search for a card that you need every single turn, it's very difficult to keep up with the race unless your opponent just full bricks after you knock out both their rolls. And this is not including the games where they get triple rolls down to try and combat that board. So I don't think the matchup with the Guardy is that great. I also don't think, and the controversial opinion is, I don't actually think the matchup to Dragapult is that great. And the reason is because if they just go Lux Cape onto a Dracloak, attach energy, and then Badoo you, you can't deal with the Dracloak. Then you kill the Badoo, right? Or like you could take a prize. They just go Stamp, Evolve, energy, and then they hit you for 200. They don't take a prize. Or if they do take a prize, they can go like Lucha, kill a Hoot Hoot, and you might not, you might only have one Hoot Hoot left. Maybe if you're lucky enough off the Stamp, you draw an out to get a knocked out, but then from there, how are you mapping out your last 4 prizes? Or like how are you mapping out like even your last 2 prizes? Because you take the Dragapult, sure, but you'd have to build into a Clefairy, right, from Stamp to 2, which is statistically unlikely. And then from there, you probably give Dragapult more time to actually like set up another Dracloak and get another energy on board. So then you'd have to deal with 2, and then to recycle the Clefairy and get that set up again is really, really difficult. So you just get sort of locked out of the game. Yeah. So Dengo, so that's sort of like the Terrorbox discussion. That's why I don't think it's like the best. So Dengo, I think, so Dengo has, it's really interesting. I don't know much about its Grimstyle matchup, so I can't comment too much about it, but theoretically speaking, if you don't evolve with to Grimstyle and you just start, you literally just build damage on board with Frostlass and with Monkey Dories, theoretically speaking, and then like attack when you need to, theoretically speaking, you should be favored in that matchup. Also, you can also set up like crazy Devo plays with like multiple Frostlass and multiple monkeys, which to me, I just don't think Dengo can deal with that. It's like Dengo is very linear. It takes one prize every single time. If you're not committing to the board, then it's really difficult for them to do anything. Also, you can also like Badoo them and like, buy more time in order to sort of like get a full setup. And then by the time they actually get fully set up, you can force like a Grimstyle active and then just start attacking them after building up some damage on board with the Frostlass. And they probably wouldn't be able to deal with that as well because they have to deal with Ionos. Plus also they have to pretty much get rid of 6 every single time to kill your Grimstyle, because I'm assuming you're going to have Monkey, you're going to have Frostlass damage on you as a Grimstyle player. So I just feel like there's a lot that you have to deal with in that matchup that makes you unfavored. And then I feel like the Guardian matchup is also inherently unfavored as well. So, I mean, really, like you're not, and like theoretically speaking, I would say that like the Bolt matchup is, it's iffy. Like against Joltik, I haven't really thought about that matchup to be honest with you because I haven't really played Dengo, but like theoretically speaking, they could also go 2-2-2 against you because they force you to take the first Joltik. So yeah, it just doesn't seem very good. Like it just doesn't seem like it has a great spread. So the logic behind playing it at a tournament doesn't really appeal to me. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay. Right. Look, for the last question, what tips would you give to other players to have into a group?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot. So this is the universal tip that I give everyone, and it's going to be really simple. Is just play a lot of Pokemon. Like when I first started, and when Brent first started as well, actually, like we sort of like started in the same way. We just watched Top Cut Pokemon, and we literally just played. Like we would have our decks in front of us, and we would just literally fish, just like draw a hand and like simulate as we were playing it. And we would watch all of these top players play and watch the commentary and really analyze why they're doing what they're doing and think about what we would do different. And if you think about like Pokemon today, there's infinite resources out there now. But the best resource is definitely Azul. So like watching Azul stream, just listening to him talk about the game is so informative, and it's so great for any new player to think about how a top player thinks about different positions. So listening to him and watching his stream would be one. And then you can watch VODs of tournament games. Pretty much all tournament games now, almost all tournament games are like recorded. So you can, like you can watch those and you can do the same thing, think about what you would do different, what you would, and critically evaluate whether or not a specific play is good. And then the other thing is just play a lot of live. Like back then we didn't have live. We had, I played this thing called Play TCG, which is like this really bad simulator, but that's all we had at the time. Now we have live, and it's not the best program, but it's better than a lot of other, it's better than what we had before. And if you just do that, you gain a lot of experience, and you get to critically evaluate what you're doing and how other players are thinking, which is really, it's incredibly valuable. And I've seen a lot of players improve drastically just by doing those two. So any new players coming into the game, if you do that, you should be in a good position and you'll set yourself up really well.
Great. What Brand are in a team, or you're a team, or testing?
Yeah. So we just have like a testing group. Like it's always been Brent, Natalie, myself, and James Cox from the Netherlands. Yeah. So it's pretty much been us four.
I think.
Yeah. No, it's really nice because also like whenever I take a break from the game and I come back, they're really understanding. Like they know that I'm busy outside of Pokemon, but whenever I'm not playing, I always love to watch them do really well, and it really puts a big smile on my face that like my friends are always on top in Pokemon. So yeah, always play Pokemon because of the love of the game, and always play Pokemon because you make some really great friends along the way. So never lose sight of that. That's also another tip that I give young players as well.
Great. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much, Kaiwen, for your time.
No worries. Thank you so much for interviewing me.
Genial. Eso sería todo por hoy. Muchas gracias, Kaiwen, y hasta luego. Chao.
Bye-bye.